All right, guys. So we're gonna review House of the Dragon season 3, episode 8, and I'm super disappointed. I can't believe this is what they chose to go with for the end of what was kind of a roller coaster, rocky season. So we're gonna do just a brief spoiler-free review, and then I gotta jump into spoilers in order to just tell you why I'm so frustrated with this episode and now the season as a whole. So, spoiler free, I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10 right out of the gate, I'm telling you right now. And for the recency bias, as much vitriol and hate that I feel for this episode, I want to give it like a 2 out of 10. But that's not reasonable or logical, so I'm not going to do that. I believe it was middle of the road. There were some good parts in here, but overall, for this to be what your whole season culminated to, and this is how you treat it, and this is the last episode, bro. I don't even care about season 4 at this point. It's kind of whatever. It's like this left no real lasting impression on me. Not a good one anyway. Super disappointed. So I gotta say, it had weird pacing. The first 50 minutes, you're still getting build up. You're still getting build up, and we'll get into that. So you know what? In fact, I'm just gonna end the spoiler-free review right there. Look, 5 out of 10. I did not like it. I was very disappointed. I had high hopes for this episode. I truly thought that this was going to be a fantastic episode and quite possibly save the entire season. For me, it did not do that. If it did that for you, please, in the comments, let me know what stood out to you for this episode that really made you like it, and tell me more about how you felt about season 3 as a whole. But for me, no, this was super disappointing, and we're going to get into that right now in the spoiler section. So just a warning, spoilers ahead. Let's jump right in. So I'm going to be bouncing around. I'm going to be all over the place. I'm going to be talking about several different things, not in any kind of chronological order, just events that pop up in my mind. One of them is the whole Helena storyline. In the very beginning of season 3, she starts to become a bigger player in this storyline, and you're getting more and more with her. You find out later she's pregnant, she's carrying a child. She adamantly refuses to do anything to harm this child or to get this child hurt. And Alicent wants her to drink this potion that kills the child, and she refuses. All that, and she jumps out of a window at the end and takes her own life, therefore killing the baby. Does that make any sense? Tell me where that makes sense. Seems a bit counterproductive to me. You spent the whole season trying your best not to have to do that, and then you kill yourself and the kid. You're an idiot. That's bad writing. Some of the writing in this season, brother, it's been all over the place. And this ruined her character arc. Yes, she was a prisoner. Yes, she hated her life there. But that was good. That added to her character development, and that made you sympathize with her and really I don't know, you just felt sorry for her as a character, and you were it drew you to her. You had this bond with her, and you felt like there was this thing where you just wanted her to be free, even if you were rooting for Rhaenyra, which, I have been throughout this season. I believe that Rhaenyra's side, is the right side because of what Viserys chose for her when he wanted her to be Queen of the Realms. So I've always stuck with that. But this way, you sympathized with Helena and what she was going through and all of her hardships. All of that thrown out the window with terrible choices that you've made for this character. So that kind of cheapened it for me. And it seemed so, just against the character's motives the entire time for season 3. Terrible. I thought that part was bad. Then we have Aegon and Aemon finally meeting up again. This has been something I've been waiting for, right? You're hyped for this. You're like, Aegon's finally got this confidence. He's manning up. He's really getting a certain amount of toughness and grit to him, and he's ready to stand up for himself. And he encounters Aemon. He slaps him right when he sees him. I was like, yeah, dude, it's about to go down. We're going to get a scuffle between the two brothers. This is going to be something where they're finally going to see each other eye to eye eventually, after this epic, battle between the two of them. Nope. Nah, you don't get that. Why would you? That'd be cool. We're not, no cool stuff here. So you get this weird moment where Aegon is like, oh, you're not fighting back. You're cheapening this for me, basically. This is not what I expected. And he sees that his brother is now broken. And, what was one of the cooler villain characters in Aemon is now like, they've crippled him. Oh, he's so disappointed. His mommy doesn't love him, and then all these people are against him. He should have leaned into that character arc the same way that Daemon does. Because eventually, this is the showdown that I want to see, is Aemon versus Daemon. And I highly doubt we're going to get that at this point, because these moments that you think are building up and culminating to these big epic battles, it turns out that's not happening. So I don't see Aemon and Daemon fighting either. Who knows? They'll probably ruin that too. So you have Aegon and Aemon storyline, which is shoved into the first 50 or so minutes of this, because that's how long it takes. 50 minutes is how long it takes before you get to the battle at Tumbleton, and that's so crazy to me. You know why? Because you had 7 episodes before this to do that. You needed basically a whole nother episode's worth of time in order to have build up to this epic fight. Yeah, sure you did. All right, so that was a wash. The Aegon and Aemon thing, I was very disappointed. I thought they would get back together and team up eventually, but to have it done in this way just seems like it's cheapened it. It's so weak. What a terrible way to write that. I just watched the show. I don't read the books, so I don't know. So for the people who do read these books, and this novel particularly, if you could enlighten us, is any of this canon? Are they staying true to the source material for this? Because at this point, I would seriously doubt it, because this just seems so bad, and I can't imagine that for the high critical acclaim that this particular storyline gets, that this is how it goes in the book. I highly doubt it. I'm so upset that it's frustrating, because you're wanting these epic moments, and you're thinking that these character motivations are leading them to these moments, only for it to just not happen, or for something else, counter to what their character development has been up to this point to happen instead. It's terrible, really, is what it is. And then you have Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra, who in the first 2 seasons is built up to be the strong character. She's trying to take her rightful place as ruler of the kingdoms, and she's just, her whole goal is to gather people to her cause, and then to rule the realms, and to take her place on the Iron Throne. And in this season, it's been such a roller coaster ride where, you're showing her as weak and whiny and bratty and insecure and unsure of herself and uncertain. And you're thinking, all right, there's been moments throughout season 3 where she's had glimpses where you're like, okay, she's turning it around. She's strong-willed. She's tough. She's powerful. You're going to see some cool stuff from her character. And then you get this where you see glimpses at times, even in this episode, where you're thinking, okay, she's going to solidify her rule. She's going to start taking charge. No nonsense. Be fierce. Be aggressive. Be strong. Rule through power like Daemon's been saying. You don't get that. In fact, she goes to the Sept to have this big anointment where she's basically, anointed as the one true ruler of all the realms. And she goes to the Sept in order to make that happen. They refuse, but you knew that was the case because they refused her earlier in the season. And you're like, okay, that seemed like that was the logical progression of things. And then you thought, okay, well, now she's going to kill this guy, right? Surely she's going to kill this guy for being a traitor. She even says it. So you're a traitor. Instead of her committing to being the strong leader and the fierce warrior, and gutting this guy in front of everyone to solidify and show how serious she is, she has Alan do it, or Adam Adam, you know what? It doesn't even matter. It wasn't her who did it. And I thought, wow, what a wasted opportunity. How dumb. Very counter to what her character arc has been for the first two seasons. And in this season, I don't know what they were doing with her. There were some cool moments with her, and then others were just like, who is she? What is she? What are you trying to make her out to be? I don't know. I don't even think the showrunner knows. It doesn't seem like they do. So that's disappointing. In fact, whoever's in charge of running this particular season, whether it's one person or a group of people, I don't know, fire them. Fire them. Get them out of there. I don't want the people who had any part in churning out what we saw here in season 3 to have any kind of a role in season 4. Because, you know what? Super disappointed with how it ended. And there were some great episodes. There were some standout episodes for this season. Episode 1, you started off with an absolute banger. It's awesome. It's intense. There's action. There's excitement. You're getting that giant naval battle and the dragons and Jacaerys and all of this. And it's so cool. Such a great set of moments. And then episode 6 stood out to me as another great episode, with Kristen Cole actually being done in by the army right in the beginning after his certain march towards death in the previous few episodes. And then you have episode 7, which, apart from 2 really cool moments that dealt with dragons, the fight with Sheepstealer and the return of Sunfire, that was kind of a middle-of-the-road episode. If you take those 2 moments out of it, the rest of episode 7 seemed pretty lackluster. And then there were some slow episodes toward the beginning of the season. Look, you needed episode 8 to stick the landing, and it didn't. It was very disappointing. You get a 20-minute chunk in here where the whole season was supposed to culminate to this big battle where you have a showdown at Tumbleton and you have dragon riders and all these people. And I thought Rhaenyra was somehow going to take part in this. And if she wasn't, I thought she was going to fly off and try to find Sunfire and Aegon, because that had been a rumor that she had heard at the start of this episode. And you're like, all right, cool, we're going to get battles on 2 fronts. She's going to go face off against Aegon. And maybe it was too early for that. But to see her maybe go in the attempt of that and like get into some battles or some scuffles along the way, nope, you didn't get that. She's kicking around King's Landing, doing whatever, whatever. She's just, I don't know, man. Dumb. Absolutely dumb. What a wasted character arc. But anyway, let's get to another wasted arc. Ormond and Daemon. This is going to be an epic showdown. You finally have it. Ormond has been running his schemes and his plots, and he's been killing Gold Cloak members, and this has now been Daemon's, mission number 1, to get Ormond, to make him pay for what he's done, and to avenge his brothers. Nah. Why would you have that? Why would you have a common sense conclusion to what was a great build-up to this moment? That would be crazy, right? Why would you do that? Instead, you have him killed by Ulf after he's ran through by the head of the Winter Wolves. Look, granted, that was a satisfying moment, but I think that could have happened after him and Daemon had some sort of scuffle or skirmish on the battlefield before the chaos split them apart. But you don't get that. Because why would you? Why would you? Yeah, I don't understand the choices that were made for this episode and why they were allowed to be made. You got to get rid of these showrunners for this season. You really do. You really do. You got to cut these people loose, because this was so bad. So bad. This had every opportunity to save the season and really stand out and solidify it as a good season. You could have got away with like a 7.5. If this was truly epic, you could have said this was an 8. Episodes 1, 6, and 8 could have carried the rest of the season. And not all of those episodes in between that I didn't name were bad. Some of them were. Some of them were bad, and some of them were slow episodes and meh episodes. But not all of them were bad. But those three could have stood out as great, amazing episodes. And even then, you can't say that your entire season was superb because of three outstanding episodes in an 8-episode season. So, but it's not. You don't get that. You get two outstanding episodes in episode 1 and 6, and you get some good moments sprinkled through all the other episodes, even the bad ones. And this was one of the bad ones that got just a good set of moments during that epic fight where you had the town was basically supposed to be taken back by force, but somewhat carefully so that you didn't harm the innocents or the people that had supported Rhaenyra and her banner. And instead, this eventually, spiraled out of control into a wash, and the town was lost. At this point, you have Ulf flying through the air, attacking both sides. The town was lost at this point. Why? Why was he left uncontested for what seems like the entirety of that battle? That made no sense to me. It doesn't make logical sense from the point of view of a viewer watching the show and then being like, okay, well, the city's, it's, counted as a loss. It's rubble at this point. You've burned everything inside of it. You're destroying the place. Both of the armies are suffering heavy casualties. Why aren't Caraxes and Daemon and Hugh and his dragon flying after Ulf and absolutely punishing him for being a traitor? I think you could have had Daemon and Ormond facing off and just beating the crap out of each other, and then having Daemon getting ready to deal these final blows before he realizes that Ulf has turned tail and had become turncoat. He became a turncoat and started working for Ormond. At that point, you would have seen him maybe like in the scuffle have some of the high tower men take Ormond away, and then Daemon retreat to Caraxes so that he could chase down Ulf with Hugh, and then fight and defeat Ulf for doing that to his people. You don't get that. You don't get what could have been an epic moment. That's insane. Like I said, I was satisfied with how Ormond died. I thought that was great. But you could have had that after the showdown when Daemon would have went off to kill Ulf, and then the Winterwolf captain, stabs him through. That would have been satisfying. I would have even been happy if Darren played a role in that because of how he was treated by Ormond this whole time. But I digress. You know what? My view on this was it was just a lot of it didn't make sense. A lot of it didn't follow logical progression through character arcs that we had established from the beginning of the series entirely all the way to the beginning of season 3. And then you thought that like some of these actions in season 3 didn't make sense. Like, Ormond and Daemon. That was one of the plots that just didn't make sense. You had this big buildup, this espionage going on where he was sending, Ormond was sending people in to cause chaos throughout the city. And you don't get that satisfying fight. It's crazy to me. Why have that buildup? Why have those moments if you're not going to have that fight between them? There's no satisfaction in that. That's crazy. And then, there was a couple other things that happened through this, but nothing really remarkable that I really cared about. Overall, here's my final thing. It's a roller coaster of a season. You get some great episodes, you get some bad ones, and this should have been a fantastic episode because everything was leading to this moment. But it seems like they wasted that. And like I said, you had to do 50 minutes of more buildup. Basically a whole nother episode's worth of time leading up to this Battle of Tumbleton. And now I'm not saying this battle should have lasted the entirety of the episode. But the 20 minutes that it did happen for didn't even seem that satisfying. There were good moments, but man, what were the other 7 episodes for if not to lead to this giant battle? Because like I said, there's so many plot points and threads going on that you could have had all these battles taking place inside the backdrop of Tumbleton, and then having the cutaways to Rhaenyra going on her quest for power or solidifying her power and showing her strength, and you didn't get that. Instead, they're jumping all over to different plot points and different story threads, and some of them just didn't even matter, and some of them just didn't even make sense, like the Helena thing where she kills herself after trying so hard to keep her and her baby alive. And you know what? I'm done. I'm over it. I don't care. I'm done with this review. I'm definitely done with this season. I hope we get a different set of people, calling the shots for season 4. But this was bad. This was bad. 5 out of 10. Like I said, I'm just so upset with it at this moment. I wish I could score it lower, but I don't think that would be doing it a justice to the episodes that were good. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought of the finale of House of the Dragon. And then let me know what you thought of season 3 as a whole. So, you know what? I'm going to catch you guys on the next one. We might do some more Game of Thrones and House of the Dragons content, but I'm going to have to wait a little while. I'm going to have to let this one set for a minute. So, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.